One introduction Rozep view the United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only. For home building and furniture building, for just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree, but it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lungs, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the Eco-Design Wood Stove, and International Convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. Rozep view purple air PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.
Hi, my name is Lily. Andrew gave you the intro to residents against wood smoke emission particulates and their concern for air pollution from indoor residential wood burning. Residents against wood smoke emission particulates, or ROSEP, would like every near neighbor of an indoor residential wood burner whose wood smoke enters their yards and sickens the near neighbors to have a purple air PM 2.5 monitor hanging from the eaves of their home to measure the level of PM 2.5 entering their yards. That measurement of air pollution should be used as evidence of unnecessary air pollution, and each indoor residential wood burner should be shut down based on that evidence, one indoor residential wood burner at a time if necessary. The presentation by Andrew ended at 2 minutes 5 seconds. The same presentation by Emma starts at 2 minutes 3 seconds before the end of this podcast. So I am Lily, your timekeeper, and you can start the next podcast at 2 minutes 5 seconds in if you would not like to see the presentation by Andrew a second time. This presentation by me, Lily, ends at 5 minutes in. What you will see in the main content of this ROSEP podcast will be news about air pollution from indoor residential wood burning, and how that air pollution is being combated by ordinary people just like you who are unfortunately near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners at this time. There will also be news about unnecessary and highly polluting use of wood as fuel in industrial wood burners and preventable air pollution from wood burning wildfires. There will also be news about air pollution from PM 2.5 from gas-powered cars. There will also be news about airborne diseases which are also preventable with vaccines such as COVID-19 and measles and whooping cough, to name just a few. In 2025, Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates is also concerned with combating the Trump destruction of government funding for programs which protect human health through the Department of Health and Human Services, and Trump destruction of programs which fund the science and medical research plan to protect human health from preventable illnesses. Protecting human health is a patriotic act, and our defense against enemies is weakened if we are not as healthy as we can be. Heat pump rebates are now offered by the federal government, distributed through the eligible United States, are available in 2025, and are the best, cleanest, and now cheapest alternative to indoor residential wood burning if that burning is actually done to purportedly save money. Wind and solar as sources of the electricity that powers heat pumps and electric cars is also cheaper than burning wood. The adverse health effects that are caused by indoor residential wood burning also come at a cost to near neighbors, both in shortening and ending their lives, and in actual hospital, clinic, and funeral costs. Instead of being compensated monetarily, near neighbors should instead be able to achieve immediate relief by stopping indoor residential wood burning in their hyper-localized neighborhoods, which relief readings from purple air PM 2.5 monitors used as evidence of air pollution will help them achieve. Welcome to news about hopeful scientific and medical achievements that will also help us achieve the goal of clean air to breathe.
Episode 57 DHWE June 6, 2025 A way to make the HIV virus visible within white blood cells. In Episode 57 DHWE1 Trump budget cuts dispute about growth of the United States economy between Trump and a new report from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development OECD 2-4 headlines 5 at CPAC of the Center Democratic moderates beat up on the left at a wonky gathering in Washington. Centrist Democrats argued that they were the majority makers the party needed to take control of Congress in 2026 and beyond. 6 Jennings trivia and Jeopardy could save our republic 7 electricity prices or surging the GOP megabill could push them higher. The combination of a data center boom, rising gas exports and cuts to clean energy tax breaks could spike American energy bills. Analysts say 8 after a day of wildfire smoke. The worst looks to be over for eastern U.S. Smoke from Canadian wildfires created unhealthy air quality from the upper Midwest to New York City. 9 It is not just poor rains causing drought. The atmosphere is thirstier. Higher temperatures caused by climate change are driving complex processes that make droughts bigger and more severe. New research shows 10 The Air Quality Index explain what it means and how to stay safe. It is wildfire season, which could mean more air pollution too. Here are a few tips to protect yourself. 11 In Australia, a Melbourne team demonstrates way to make the HIV virus visible within white blood cells, paving the way to fully clear it from the body. 12 The Trump White House threatens to pull billions from the high-speed rail project of California. The Trump administration says the project, originally from San Francisco to LA, has no viable path to move ahead. 13 The United Kingdom, the spirit of Liz Truss, ridiculous but relentless, still stalks British politics. Nigel Farage and Kemi Badenoch have much more in common with the failed Tory leader than either cares to admit. 14 Canadian wildfires prompt air quality alerts across 5 U.S. states. Officials in New York, New Jersey, Iowa, New Hampshire and Maine issued alerts due to smoke from fires in Canada. Main content. 1 Trump budget cuts dispute about growth of the United States economy between Trump and a new report from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development OECD. Excerpts edited by Rossep for brevity and clarity. In relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Substack letters from an American. Heather Cox Richardson, June 4, 2025. Just hours after Trump posted on social media yesterday that, because of tariffs, our economy is booming. A new report from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development (OECD) said the opposite. Founded in 1961, the OECD is a forum in which 38 market-based democracies cooperate to promote sustainable economic growth. The OECD Economic Outlook reports that economic growth around the globe is slowing because of the Trump trade war. It projects global growth slowing from 3.3% in 2024 to 2.9% in 2025 and 2026. Point that economic slowdown is concentrated primarily in the United States, Canada, Mexico and China. The OECD predicts that growth in the United States will decline from 2.8% in 2024 to 1.6% in 2025 and 1.5% in 2026. The Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office (CBO) released 2 analyses today of the Trump policies that add more detail to that report. The CBO estimates for the effect of the Trump current tariffs, which are unlikely to stay as they are, is that they will raise inflation and slow economic growth as consumers bear their costs. The CBO says it is hard to anticipate how the tariffs will change purchasing behavior, but it estimates that the tariffs will reduce the deficit by $2.8 trillion over 10 years. Also today, the CBO analysis of the One Big Beautiful Bill of Republicans is that it will add $2.4 trillion to the deficit over the next decade because the $1.2 trillion in spending cuts in the measure do not fully offset the $3.7 trillion in tax cuts for the wealthy and corporations. Republicans have met the CBO score with a tax on the CBO, but its estimate is in keeping with those of the wide range of economists and think tanks. Taken together, these studies illustrate how the Trump economic policies are designed to transfer wealth from consumers to the wealthy and corporations. From 1981 to 2021, American policies moved $50 trillion from the bottom 90% of Americans to the top 1% after Biden stopped that upward transfer. The Trump administration is restarting it again on steroids. Just how these policies are affecting Americans is no longer clear, though economists no longer trust the accuracy of the inflation data of the United States officials from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which compiles a huge monthly survey of employment and costs, told economists that staffing shortages and a hiring freeze have forced them to cut back on their research and use less precise methods for figuring out price changes. Trump gutting of the government seeks to decimate the modern government that regulates business, provides a basic social safety net, promotes infrastructure to replace it with a government that permits a few wealthy men to roll the CBO score for the omnibus bill of Republicans projects that if it is enacted 16 million people will lose access to health care insurance over the next decade in what is essentially an assault on the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. The bill also dramatically cuts supplemental nutrition assistance plan, SNAP benefits, clean energy credits, benefits for federal workers and consumer protection services, while requiring the sale of public natural resources. Yesterday, the administration announced it is ending the Biden 2022 guidance to hospital emergency rooms that accept Medicare, which is virtually all of them, requiring that under the Emergency Medical Treatment and Active Labor Act they must perform an abortion in an emergency if the procedure is necessary to prevent the organ failure or severe hemorrhaging of the patient. The Emergency Medical Treatment and Active Labor Act requires emergency rooms to stabilize patients. The Trump administration will no longer enforce that policy in 2024. It was found that even when the Biden administration policy was being enforced, dozens of pregnant women, some of whom needed emergency abortions, were turned away from emergency rooms with advice to let nature take its course. Two headlines. The New York Times, June 5, 2025. Democratic Party at CPAC of the Center. Democratic moderates beat up on the left. The New York Times. Democratic Party opinion: can pop culture be political and good? The New York Times opinion: how history will remember Elon Musk. The New York Times. Politics and Jeopardy opinion: can Jennings trivia and Jeopardy could save our republic. The New York Times. Trump actions: Trump threatens taking milk name off ship during Pride Month. The Harvey Milk name is not going anywhere in San Francisco. The New York Times. Trump budget cuts: the Trump policy bill would add $2.4 trillion to debt. Budget office says. The New York Times. Trump budget cuts: U.S. is trimming back its collection of consumer price data. The New York Times. Trump tariffs opinion: tariffs make the world poorer and more perilous. The New York Times. Trumpist Republican Party fearful: House Republicans scramble to mollify Musk. The New York Times. Trumpist Republican Party opinion on Joni Ernst and her disregard for human life opinion: selfishness is not a virtue. The New York Times. Wood burning kills ancient trees. Although the RAWSEP view is that the PM 2.5 air pollution from wood burning is basically the same from ancient trees and ordinary trees. Ancient trees dwindling in the wild thrive on sacred ground. The New York Times. Three headlines. The New York Times, June 4, 2025. Democratic Party: Karina Jean-Pierre, former Biden press secretary, leaves Democratic Party. The New York Times. Trump actions opinion: now Trump is an art critic. The New York Times. New Jersey: the Trump influence is everywhere in the New Jersey governor race. The New York Times. Republican Party book review: Buckley by Sam Tannenhouse. The New York Times. Science and medicine and Trump budget cuts: here are the nearly 2,500 medical research grants canceled or delayed by Trump. The New York Times. Science and medicine: the best water quality test kit for your home. Reviews by Wirecutter. Trump actions opinion: the Trump gilded gut instinct. The New York Times. Trump tariffs opinion: the Trump tariffs are a step toward unbridled presidential power. The New York Times. Trump actions: Trump delighted by Saudi deal for 2 rare Arabian leopards. The New York Times. Trump budget cuts to clean energy sources, which are alternatives to indoor residential wood burning, could push electricity prices higher. Electricity prices are surging. The GOP megabill could push them higher. The New York Times. Trump budget cuts: Trump allies try to discredit experts warning about the cost of tax cuts. The New York Times. Trump budget cuts: the Trump policy bill would add $2.4 trillion to debt. Budget office says. The New York Times. Trump tariffs: how hard it is to make trade deals. The New York Times. Trump tariffs: how higher tariffs on steel and aluminum will affect companies. The New York Times. Ukraine: Putin intends to respond to Ukraine strikes on Russian bombers. Trump says RAWSEP view it as traitorous for Trump to speak to Putin about the Putin response to Ukraine strikes without taking the side of the liberal democracy of Ukraine. The New York Times. United Kingdom and Trump tariffs: UK exempt from the Trump 50 steel tariff, but Europe still has to pay. The New York Times. Wood burning and PM 2.5 air pollution: Eastern US is shrouded in smoke from Canadian wildfires. and Saharan dust. The New York Times: wood burning and other solid fuel burning is one contributor to an increasingly thirsty atmosphere. It is not just poor rains causing drought, the atmosphere is thirstier. The New York Times: wood burning and science and medicine. What is the air quality index? Here is how to stay safe. The New York Times. 4 headlines. The Guardian, June 5, 2025. HIV cure. Near and science and medicine. Australia: Melbourne breakthrough in search for HIV cure leaves researchers overwhelmed. Global development. The Guardian: the Netherlands and Trumpist collapse. Collapse of Dutch government leaves uncertainty on streets of Amsterdam, Netherlands. The Guardian: Trump actions threaten the cleaner energy transport of high-speed rail. Rossep view: high-speed rail is a way to cut air pollution emissions from other dirtier transport choices. White House threatens to pull billions from the high-speed rail project of California. The Guardian: Trump actions. Trump orders inquiry into the actions of Biden as president over cognitive decline, reports Joe Biden. The Guardian: Trump budget cuts. Trump news at a glance. Elon Musk rallies voters to kill the Trump signature tax bill. Trump administration. The Guardian: Trump budget cuts. The Trump tax bill would add $2.4 trillion to U.S. debt, says nonpartisan analysis. Trump administration. The Guardian: United Kingdom and Trumpist collapse. Back in 2022, the spirit of Liz Truss: ridiculous but relentless still stalks British politics. Raphael Bear. The Guardian: wood burning and air pollution. Canadian wildfires prompt air quality alerts across 5 U.S. states. U.S. News. The Guardian. 5 At CPAC of the center. Democratic moderates speed up on the left at a wonky gathering in Washington. Centrist Democrats argued that they were the majority makers the party needed to take control of Congress in 2026 and beyond. Excerpts edited by Rossep for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, June 4, 2025. The centrist wing of the Democratic Party gathered on Wednesday in a hotel basement in downtown Washington with a grand plan. The party should start winning and stop losing. Surveying the wreckage of the 2024 election, the proud moderates here pleaded that their faction should seize control of the messaging of the Democratic Party, stiff-arm liberal interest groups, and experience the spoils of real-life victory, all while ignoring angry online activists. The Democrats in the room aimed to put a new sheen on and perhaps some more spine in what has long been tagged as the mushy middle, arguing that they are the majority makers the party needs in 2026 and beyond to take control of Congress. It was a wonky gathering where the center-left Substack pundit Matthew Iglesias was greeted like a rock star, and Lakshya Jain, a data-crunching analyst, detailed a ratings system to show which Democratic lawmakers had the highest candidate quality. War wins above replacement, a term borrowed from baseball analytics. This room may be full of nerds, said Andrew Mamu, a Democratic strategist who attended the conference. Welcome fest, but the focus is how to not look like losers and how to not be losers. This event was not the place to debate the finer points of policy. There was glancingly little discussion beyond what it would sell with voters, if some called it the CPAC of the center. After the big right-wing confab, there was far less red meat and more crudité. A platter of chopped peppers, carrots and cauliflower was served in the back. Instead, the thrust of the discussion of the day was dismissing the left wing of the Democratic Party as an anchor to Democratic chances to win national elections. Scattered potshots were aimed at the activist group Indivisible throughout the day, with Representative Jared Golden of Maine, who represents the most pro-Trump district of any Democrat in the House, calling it a hyper-national organization with a very single-minded agenda. 6 Ken Jennings trivia and Jeopardy could save our republic. Excerpts edited by Rossep for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, June 5, 2025. Jennings is the host of Jeopardy! Facts may seem faintly old-timey in the 21st century, remnants of the rote learning style that went out of fashion in classrooms and that the internet search made obsolete decades ago, but societies are built on facts, as we can see more clearly when institutions built on knowledge teeter. Inaccurate facts make for less informed decisions. Less informed decisions make for bad policy. Watch a game of Jeopardy! tonight, or head down to your local pub quiz and you are sure to be asked about scientific breakthroughs, milestones of history and masterpieces of art, the kind of shared knowledge that used to tie society together, the proposition that factual questions could be answered correctly or not, that those answers matter and that we largely agreed on, the authorities and experts who could confirm them. It has been more than 8 years since the coinage of the phrase alternative facts by Kellyanne Conway on Meet the Press, an Orwellian way to soft pedal the outright falsehoods being told by powerful institutions pollution. Scientific consensus in fields like climate change and vaccine efficacy is no longer the official position of American government. Ditto for political facts. The winner of the 2020 election and historical facts. Too many examples to list. Inconvenient experts who push back can be removed by executive order. Inconvenient books that disagree can be removed from libraries. The new AI agents are sophisticated text predictors, and it is easy to mistake their output for expertise. Human experts are not always right, but it would take a severe brain injury to make one confidently hallucinate invented information as factual as the current generation of artificial intelligence is prone to do. 7. Electricity prices are surging. The GOP megabill could push them higher. The combination of a data center boom, rising gas exports, and cuts to clean energy tax breaks could spike American energy bills. Analysts say accepted by raw SEP for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, June 4, 2025. The cost of electricity is rising across the country, forcing Americans to pay more on their monthly bills and squeezing manufacturers and small businesses that rely on cheap power. And some of the Trump policies risk making things worse. Despite his promises to slash energy prices, companies and researchers say this week the Senate is taking up the Trump sweeping domestic policy bill, which has already passed the House in its current form. That bill would abruptly end most of the Biden-era federal tax credits for low-carbon sources of electricity like wind, solar batteries, and geothermal power. Repealing those credits could increase the energy bill of an average family by as much as $400 per year within a decade, according to several studies published this year. Ending tax breaks for solar panels, wind turbines, and batteries would make them more expensive and less plentiful, increasing demand for energy from power plants that burn natural gas. That could push up the price of gas, which currently generates 43% of the electricity of America. While government forecasters expect electricity prices to rise quickly over the next 2 years, they predict gasoline prices for cars will fall, offsetting some household costs. Oil prices have already declined nearly 20% since Trump took office, partly because of concerns that his tariffs could slow global economic growth. Still, the threat of rising electricity bills has made some lawmakers nervous about scrapping federal support for clean energy. A portfolio manager who specializes in power and energy infrastructure called the proposed rollbacks of clean energy tax credits by the House of Representatives a worst-case scenario regardless of the fate of the energy tax credits. Experts say rising electricity prices will continue to roil policy debates. Some industrial consumers are already urging restrictions on liquefied natural gas (LNG) exports. Other groups are pressing state regulators to scrutinize utility spending on transmission upgrades, arguing that companies often inflate costs. We are facing a huge affordability crisis in America, said a former Energy Department advisor who recently founded Powerlines, a nonprofit organization focused on modernizing utility regulations to cut power bills. This issue is not going away. 8. After a day of wildfire smoke, the worst looks to be over for eastern U.S. Smoke from Canadian wildfires created unhealthy air quality from the upper Midwest to New York City. Accepted by raw SEP for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, June 4, 2025. Wildfire smoke from Canada hovered over large portions of the United States on Wednesday, creating hazy skies and hazardous air quality from the northeast to the southeast. The National Weather Service issued air quality alerts on Wednesday for New York City and many surrounding areas, including New Jersey and most of Connecticut. The most concentrated area of smoke on Wednesday was over a strip spread from Iowa and Illinois into Wisconsin, with Milwaukee experiencing some of the worst air quality in the country. Air quality readings in cities including Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Columbus, Ohio were at very unhealthy levels between 100 and 140. Early Wednesday morning, but by Wednesday afternoon those readings were improving and Milwaukee was in the red zone with a reading of 157 according to the New York Times Air Quality Tracker. The scale of the index runs from 0 to 500. The higher the number, the more polluted the air. Those levels were an improvement from Tuesday, when both St. Paul and Minneapolis had registered readings of 226 in the morning. Above 200 the air is considered very unhealthy and risky for everyone in Iowa. An air quality alert issued by the Iowa Department of natural resources was expected to remain in effect through Thursday morning. According to the Weather Service, on Thursday the smoke is expected to lighten over the northeast but is likely to remain heavy in Canada and around the Great Lakes. The worst looks to be over, said a meteorologist with the Weather Prediction Center yesterday, and today were the height of the pattern. 9. It is not just poor rains causing drought. The atmosphere is thirstier. Higher temperatures caused by climate change are driving complex processes that make droughts bigger and more severe. New research shows subsetted by RCEP for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, June 4, 2025. Look down from a plane at farms in the Great Plains and the West and you will see green circles dotting the countryside. They are from center pivot irrigation systems, but some farmers are finding older versions, many built 10, 15 or even 20 years ago, are not keeping up with the hotter reality of today, said an agricultural hydrologist at the University of Idaho. There's a gap between how much water you can apply and what the crop demands are, he said. By the time the arm of the sprinkler swings back around to its starting point, the soil has nearly dried out. The main culprit, atmospheric thirst. A hotter world is a thirstier one, said a hydroclimatologist at the University of Oxford. He led a new study published on Wednesday in the journal Nature, which found that atmospheric thirst, a factor that fills in some of the blanks in our understanding of drought over the last 4 decades, has made droughts more frequent, more intense, and has caused them to cover larger areas. In general, droughts happen when there is an imbalance between water supply and demand. Rain delivers water to the surface. This year, researchers added a new term to the weather dictionary: thirst waves, for when the evaporative demand is exceptionally high for at least 3 days, putting crops at risk. Some farmers in the West are giving up on irrigation, while more farmers in the upper Midwest and eastern United States are beginning to invest in expensive irrigation systems as atmospheric thirst causes more and more flash droughts. The study ends in 2022, but the following years brought record heat. The summer of 2024 was the warmest on record in the Northern Hemisphere. 2023 was second, and as warming continues, atmospheric thirst will grow, as will droughts. Landscapes that experience droughts again and again struggle to recover, creating a vicious cycle of desiccation. Better models of atmospheric thirst should improve predictions for drinking water, irrigation, and hydropower. The study used a 6-month average. Future work could focus on shorter time scales that are more helpful for farmers and water managers. 10. The Air Quality Index explained what it means and how to stay safe. It is wildfire season, which could mean more air pollution too. Here are a few tips to protect yourself. Subsetted by RCEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The New York Times, May 30, 2025. Wildfires burning across Canada are generating clouds of toxic smoke affecting air quality across Canada and into parts of the northern United States. A measure called the Air Quality Index gauges just how bad the air has become in a particular place. Readings of 100 or higher usually serve as a warning to people who have respiratory conditions to take precautions. Having an understanding of the Air Quality Index can help you protect yourself from the harmful effects of air pollution. Here is a guide to how it works. What is the Air Quality Index? The Air Quality Index reflects the density of 5 pollutants in the air: ground level ozone particulates, carbon monoxide, nitrogen dioxide, and sulfur dioxide. It was established by the Environmental Protection Agency as a way to communicate to Americans the state of the air they are breathing each day. The data that goes into the index comes from pollution monitors at more than 1,000 locations across the country. The scale of the index runs from 0 to 500. The higher the number, the worse the air. If the index is registering less than 100, then the air pollution at that location is considered below the level that is known to cause adverse health effects. Above 150, the air is considered unhealthy, and the ill effects might start to be felt by people who are not in sensitive groups. Above 200, the air is very unhealthy and all kinds of people would be at risk. Index readings fall into one of 6 color-coded categories, ranging from green for the best conditions through yellow, orange, red, and purple to maroon for the most hazardous levels. The colors are used on air quality forecast maps. Wildfires are a common cause of extended periods of unhealthy air. In 2020, smoke from wildfires pushed the index above 400 around Portland, while the levels in the San Francisco Bay Area hovered between 200 and 300. The national average air quality index in 2023 was 38 according to IQ Air, Swiss air quality technology company. More than 100 nations had cleaner air on average than the United States, and 32 fared worse. 11 in Australia. Melbourne team demonstrates a way to make the HIV virus visible within white blood cells, paving the way to fully clear it from the body. Excerpts edited by Ross Epp for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 non-profit organization, The Guardian, June 5, 2025. A cure for HIV could be a step closer after researchers found a new way to force the virus out of hiding inside human cells. The ability of the virus to conceal itself inside certain white blood cells has been one of the main challenges for scientists looking for a cure. It means there is a reservoir of the HIV in the body capable of reactivation that neither the immune system nor drugs can tackle. Now researchers from the Peter Doherty Institute for Infection and Immunity in Melbourne have demonstrated a way to make the virus visible, paving the way to fully clear it from the body. It is based on nanotechnology which came to prominence during the COVID-19 pandemic when it was used in vaccines made by Moderna and Pfizer-BioNTech. In a paper published in Nature Communications, the researchers have shown for the first time that NA can be delivered into the cells where HIV is hiding by encasing it in a tiny specially formulated fat bubble. The NA then instructs the cells to reveal the virus. Globally, there are almost 40 million people living with HIV who must take medication for the rest of their lives in order to suppress the virus and ensure they do not develop symptoms or transmit it. For many it remains deadly, with UNAIDS figures suggesting one person died of HIV every minute in 2023. It was previously thought impossible to deliver NA to the type of white blood cell that is home to HIV, said Dr. Paula Seval, research fellow at the Doherty Institute and co-first author of the study, because those cells did not take up the fat bubbles or lipid nanoparticles LNPs used to carry it. The team have developed a new type of LNP that those cells will accept, known as LNPX. She said, our hope is that this new nanoparticle design could be a new pathway to an HIV cure. Ultimately, one big unknown remains: do you need to eliminate the entire reservoir for success or just the major part? If just 10% of the latent reservoir survives, will that be sufficient to seed new infection? Only time will tell. However, that does not detract from the significance of the current study, which represents a major potential advance in delivery of NA for therapeutic purposes to blood cells. Professor Thomas Hank of the Jenner Institute, University of Oxford, disputed the idea that getting RNA into white blood cells had been a significant challenge. He said the hope that all cells in the body where HIV was hiding could be reached in this way was merely a dream. 12. The Trump White House threatens to pull billions from the high-speed rail project of California. The Trump administration says the project, originally from San Francisco to LA, has no viable path to move ahead. Excerpts edited by Ross Epp for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 non-profit organization, The Guardian, June 4, 2025. The years-long effort of California to construct a high-speed rail faces yet another hurdle, as the Trump administration said the project had no viable path to move ahead and threatened to pull billions of dollars in federal funding. Sean Duffy, the U.S. Transportation Secretary, released a compliance review report that said the project was in default of the terms of its federal grant awards and said it has been beset by mismanagement, waste and ever-growing costs. Here is the cold hard truth: there is no viable path to complete the rail project on time or on budget. California is on notice, Duffy said, adding that it could soon be time for funds to move to other projects. High-speed rail, long available in Japan and Europe, has been a dream for decades in California, with supporters hopeful it could reduce the environmental impact in a state known for its rampant car use, connect the state and drive economic development with the creation of thousands of jobs. In 2008, California voters approved $10 billion in funding for the bullet train, which was supposed to bring passengers from San Francisco to Los Angeles in less than 3 hours and be completed by 2020 at a total cost of $33 billion. 17 years on. The estimated cost of the project is expected to exceed $100 billion. The state has now focused not on the original route designed to connect the metropolitan areas of California, but on a 171-mile stretch in the Central Valley, which is expected to be completed by 2033 at a cost of more than $35 billion. The entirety of the line received environmental clearance for construction in 2024, and the project finally began laying down track this year. Frustrations over the delays and growing costs have mounted. In 2019, Trump canceled almost $1 billion in funding for the project. The Biden administration, however, restored that funding and later allocated another $3.3 billion toward the project, but California is still expected to come up with most of the budget, and it has so far. The state has supplied 82% of the $14 billion already spent on the project. No state in America is closer to launching high-speed rail than California. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, said earlier this year, "We are moving into the track-laying phase, completing structures for key segments and laying the groundwork for a high-speed rail network." 13. The United Kingdom. The spirit of Liz Truss, ridiculous but relentless, still stalks British politics. Nigel Farage and Kemi Badenoch have much more in common with the failed Tory leader than either cares to admit, except cited by ROSEP for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 non-profit organization, The Guardian, June 4, 2025. We need to talk about Liz Truss, although there are reasons not to bother. The Prime Minister, who failed faster than any previous holder of the office, has much to say about her dismal record, but nothing insightful. She cuts a pitiful spectacle, padding out the schedule at right-wing conferences, chasing attention and relevance with the fervor of an addict. Last week, Truss was at the Conservative Political Action Conference CPAC in Budapest, sharing the big lesson she learned in government. It was that British institutions have been captured by a leftist doctrine and that they hate Western civilization. Badenoch is on the same page as Truss, who told the CPAC audience last week that free-thinking dissidents from the Britain of Keir Starmer find refuge in the Hungary of Viktor Orban. Orban is the foremost European admirer of Vladimir Putin. He has suffocated independent media and political opposition. There is money to be earned bad-mouthing Britain on the ultra-nationalist lecture circuit. It is also hard to know how receptive a UK audience is to US conservative manias. Perhaps we should be grateful to Liz Truss for playing the archetype of unwitting accomplice to tyranny, the useful idiot of Cold War parlance. So ineptly she contaminates any cause she touches. She is not too extreme, only artless in applying the camouflage. She is the crumpled, discarded packaging from a product that, rewrapped, could be delivered once again to Downing Street. 14. Canadian wildfires prompt air quality alerts across 5 U.S. states. Officials in New York, New Jersey, Iowa, New Hampshire and Maine issued alerts due to smoke from fires in Canada. Excerpts edited by ROSEP for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 non-profit organization, The Guardian, June 4, 2025. Smoke from wildfires in Canada is spreading across multiple states in the U.S., including the eastern seaboard, prompting multiple states to issue air quality alerts. The poor air quality stretching across the U.S. came as a result of dozens of wildfires burning across Canada as the annual wildfire season of Canada roars into destructive action. The fires, which have been sparked by both humans and natural causes, have prompted at least 25,000 residents in 3 Canadian provinces to evacuate in recent days. A Royal Canadian Mounted Police vehicle near a wildfire burning in Manitoba province. Thousands evacuated in 3 Canadian provinces as wildfires continue on Wednesday afternoon. A map from the Air Now forecast of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency showed large swaths of moderate to unhealthy air quality across the east, Midwest and southern parts of the U.S., featuring smoke and dust. Also on Wednesday, the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation issued an air quality advisory from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. for multiple counties, including parts of New York City. New York officials recommended that individuals consider limiting strenuous outdoor physical activity to reduce the risk of adverse health effects. Similarly, the Department of Environmental Protection of New Jersey issued a code orange air quality alert for the multiple parts of the state on Wednesday. Meanwhile, the Iowa Department of Natural Resources issued a statewide air quality alert on Tuesday that is set to last until Thursday. The department warned that intermittent thick smoke can be expected over the state, and New Hampshire officials declared an air quality action day on Tuesday. And in Maine, the State Department of Environmental Protection issued an air quality alert from 11 a.m. Wednesday to 11 p.m. Thursday.
Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. Saying the quiet part out loud. Roar. Hi, I am Tiger. Our human asked us to get up from our naps and start Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. She gave us a list of internet allies, which we will post for her here.
Hi, I am Leone. It is better for your mental fitness to go to these websites than to go to bro sites for advice. Substack letters from an American Heather Cox Richardson. Substack your local epidemiologist. The Midas Touch. The Guardian. The New York Times.
1. Introduction. Rosette view. The United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only for home building and furniture building. For just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions. Yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree. But it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen, and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut down and burn tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lung, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the Eco-Design Wood Stove and International Convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. Rosette view. Purple air. PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.